Oh, look, I'm so surprised. I had it set up already as far as I needed it to. Good evening. Starting off the week in the middle of the week here, but still a good day. Still a great night for streaming, and always a good time to read the word and hear the words of God and gather as faithful. My name's Stuart Davis. I'm the host of this channel, A Flawed Man of God, and I am here uh, in this little corner of YouTube that I've created, little corner of the internet, for us to gather as, like I said, the faithful, right? Christians to grow of any stripe and any level from the expert, the guy who's knows mostly everything there is to know about Christian theology, history, very mature in their faith, all the way down to the person who's just interested, maybe dipping their toes in the water of Christianity. All denominations, well, most denominations, um, we don't, we do have some guardrails here, but for the most part, Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, you're welcome here because we're here to support each other, not necessarily agree with each other on everything, but talk about issues, current events, all sorts of stuff that's happening in our lives, personal and with the world at large, and be a small group, be a study group, be a community, right? Fellowship is the word here, and that's what I felt like. That's what I felt like this place needed, right? And what we're doing right now is something we've been doing well, almost every single stream, especially recently, but almost every single stream for the last few years, which is this project where we're going through the Bible, a couple of chapters a night in order from Genesis to Revelation, and giving our perspective as we walk, as we read through it, reacting to it, right? Because especially when you read it in order, Bible, and you read more than just a passage or a verse here and there, when you're really involved and listening to what's going on and understanding what's going on, then that gives you a little bit different perspective. And look, want to hear about it. And I say you because you have the opportunity to be a part of this, right? It's not just me. Now, I'm the host, I'm the one you're going to be hearing, but you have an opportunity, especially when it's as quiet as it is tonight, to let your voice be heard, right? Get in the chat, talk about it, and give us some of your thoughts. It's this place to share your opinion, because while this stream is small, that offers you the opportunity to be able to be heard. Because if you put something in that chat box and you put it up there, I will read and respond to it. Right. And, maybe you have a critique, maybe you have something you want to add on to, maybe maybe you have a question. And if you have a question, I'll be as upfront as possible. I'm not an expert here. I'm very much laity. I've been in the church, grew up in the church, so I can give you 40 years of experience, over 40 years of experience in the church. But I'm not a pastor. I'm not a biblical scholar, and I haven't been to seminary, right? And this stream is not a substitution for church, right? While I can talk, and sometimes it might sound like a sermon, I'm not a preacher, right? I'm not someone who is, I think, qualified to lead you as such. But I want to talk with you. I want to engage with you, and I want to see you grow if that's what you need, or just share. Right? Maybe you've got some knowledge I don't have. That wouldn't be that hard to do. So, like I said, participate if you want. If not, then just listen along. But like and subscribe if you haven't already. Share this with people you think need to hear it or would like to hear it. That would be awesome. I guess we all need to hear it, right? So we're going to start a new book tonight, Nahum, right? And we're going to be visiting a place we haven't been away from that long. Tonight is, well, we're going to understand maybe why Jonah felt the way he did, or why Jonah had the opinions that he did, right? It's going to let us down a little bit, but the place that we're returning to is not doing anything we haven't seen other people do before. And it's not going to be much. There's not going to be much to this book. It's only 3 chapters, so we're going to do 2 tonight and 1 on Friday, kind of like last Wednesday and Friday night, and go over it. So Nahum is the book, right? 7th book among the 9 minor prophets in the Hebrew Bible. I'm reading the summary, right? The introduction summary. Not from the Bible. This is just an outsider, in case anybody gets gets confused. 7th book among the minor prophets in the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Old Testament. We call it just the Old Testament. Focusing on God's judgment against the Assyrian Empire and its capital, Nineveh. Written by the prophet Nahum, identified as the Elkoshite. The text was likely composed between 663 BC, after the Assyrian destruction of Thebes, and in 612 BC, before the fall of Nineveh, serving as a sequel to the book of Jonah. Let's see. Bible Project. Excuse me. That's not appropriate to do on stream. Is it Friday already? There we go. Author of the book of, I got questions. That's where I always run to. Book of Nahum identifies himself as Nahum, Hebrew word for consoler or comforter. Sorry, not comfortable. Comforter. There are many theories as to where that city was, though there are no conclusive evidence. One such theory is that it refers to the city later called Capernaum, which literally means the village of Nahum. Oh, this is talking about Elkoshite. Okay. Not Nineveh, I was about to say. Yes, the same thing, 653 and 612 BC, because of events that happened. Purpose of the writing. I think this is important. Nahum did not write this book as a warning or call to repentance for the people of Nineveh, kind of like what Jonah was doing when he showed up in Nineveh. God had already sent them the prophet Jonah 150 years earlier with his promise of what would happen if they continued in their evil ways. The people at that time had repented, but now, 150 years later, what does that sound like? We'll get into that a little bit. They now live just as bad, if not worse, than they did before. The Assyrians had become absolutely brutal in their conquests, hanging the bodies of their victims on poles and putting their skin on the walls of their tents, among other atrocities. Now Nahum was telling the people of Judah not to despair because God had pronounced judgment and the Assyrians would soon be getting just what they deserved. So, we'll go into Nahum talking about Nineveh. Very interesting. Normally we split this, right? And I usually say this at the beginning of each book that we start, is that we split it right down the middle. When you see it on the page here, we've got the amplified translation, which I was given it was recommended to me by a viewer of the show. And I've since really just thoroughly enjoyed it, especially for these readings, as it helps give context right in the writing. To the right of that, you'll see the ESV. And while the translations pretty much say the same thing, right? There are some differences in wording. And this is it's pretty striking here, the difference. It's not at the beginning of, they don't put the title at the beginning in the ESV. They do at the beginning of the Amplified. The beginning of Amplified says God is awesome. And in the ESV it titles it God's wrath against Nineveh. Now you can look at this a couple of different ways. You can take the funny approach, right? God's wrath against Nineveh. Based. God is awesome, right? He's putting forth, he's letting loose his wrath against God, or against Nineveh and the Assyrians, right? That's what's how to happen. That's great. Or you can look at God is awesome and the fact that his power is awesome and omnipotent. And when you can really see him let loose just a fraction, the tiniest fraction of his power, being all powerful, limitless, it can really put into perspective how great he is and how awesome he is. But we'll see. We'll see how it works here. So let's begin Nahum. We're going to read chapters 1 and 2 tonight. 1 and 2 tonight. And we'll start presently. Chapter 1. God is awesome. The oracle, a burdensome message, a pronouncement from God concerning Nineveh, the capital city of Assyria. The book of the vision of Nahum of Elkosh, which he saw in spirit and prophesied. Oh, before we go further, that was a nice little intro. It's been since they were talking about time frame. Like we said, Jonah happens almost smack dab in the middle of Kings and Chronicles, and Nahum's taking play, and that's about 750, right? Somewhere in between 800 and 700, but looking like pretty close to 750, whereas Nahum is 150 years later. Or so, 150 or so years later. The Lord is a jealous and avenging God, protecting and demanding what is rightfully and uniquely his. The Lord avenges, and he is full of wrath. The Lord takes vengeance on his adversaries, and he reserves wrath for his enemies. The Lord is slow to anger and great in power, and he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished. The Lord has his way in the whirlwind and in the storm, and the clouds are the dust beneath his feet. He rebukes the sea and dries it up. He dries up all the rivers, illustrating his judgment. Bashan on the east and Mount Carmel on the west wither, and in the north the blossoms of Lebanon fade. The mountains quake before him, and the hills melt away. Indeed, the earth is shaken by his presence. Yes, the world and all that dwell in it. Who can stand before his indignation, his great wrath? And who can stand up and endure the fierceness of his anger? His wrath is poured out like fire, and the rocks are destroyed by him. The Lord is good, a strength and stronghold in the day of trouble. He knows, he recognizes, cares for, and understands fully those who take refuge and trust in him. But with an overwhelming flood of judgment through invading armies, he will make a complete destruction of its sight and will pursue his enemies into darkness. Whatever plot you Assyrians devise against the Lord, he will make a complete end of it. Affliction of God's people by the hand of Assyria will not occur twice. Like tangled thorn branches gathered for fuel, and like those drowned in drunkenness, the people of Nineveh are consumed through fire, like stubble, completely withered and dry in the day of the Lord's wrath. From you, O Nineveh, one has gone forth, who plotted evil against the Lord a malevolent counselor, the king of Assyria. This is what the Lord says. Though they are at full strength and many in number, even so they will be cut off and pass away. Though I have afflicted you and caused you grief, O Jerusalem, I will afflict you no longer. Now I will break this yoke of taxation off you, and I will tear off your shackles. So we should backed up a little bit before that when it said this is what the Lord says. He's talking about things that we already recognize, right? How awesome God is. And so that's kind of what I said is like, yeah, God is awesome. Like, yeah, God's great. He really stuck it to Nineveh, right? Really let loose. But what we see here is God's power. God is awesome and what he can do, right? Who he is and how the universe responds to him, its creator. And the imagery used by Nahum here certainly is great, but it still doesn't even come close to illustrating how great God actually is and how awesome his power is. Right. But we try to put it into perspective, right? Rebukes the sea, dries it up. Slow to anger, great in power. What is it? This is what it is. The mountains quake before him and the hills melt away. Indeed, the earth is shaken by its presence. Yes, all the world and all who dwell on it. So we see what it's like, right? But what we start off with before that is the Lord is a jealous and avenging God. So if you're on this already kind of sets the stage, right? If you are doing what you're supposed to, you should be okay. This is God talking. This is a God who's going to protect you, right? This is a God who you can seek refuge in. If you are somebody who might be, I don't know, doing really awful things, worshiping other gods, right? Then this is not a good place to be. Right. And then part of what we see here when at the very end where well, continuing on in verse 12 where we started on in that section, I will afflict you no longer. He's talking to Jerusalem. Because how much do you want to bet if we went and looked in Chronicles and Kings that this was the Assyrians were harassing and afflicting Jerusalem and Judah because they weren't doing what they were supposed to. So welcome to the show, by the way. I don't think I have ever heard anyone say the word Nahum. We used to have to read it. One of the parts of my childhood I remember most clear is when I was in second grade, third grade in Sunday school. We started every Sunday school off reading through the books of the Bible. Right. Genesis, we just name them off, rattle them off like you would the alphabet. And I thought that was good. It's a good fundamental thing. We don't teach that anymore. At least I don't think we do, which I kind of miss. But, and it's a little bit easier these days when you can scroll through an app or something. But still, when you're going through, it's always Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and just rifle right down. And then you get to, right, the minor prophets is always where everybody slows down because it's a lot of hard names and hard and obscure names, and you're not always as sure how they're ordered, right? It's a little bit easier when you get into the Gospels. The names are a little bit easier, right? Timothy, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Romans. Very much easier. But yeah, that Nahum was Nahum was right in there. So I said it at least every Sunday, but we never got into that, which is kind of a shame, really, because so many people know, and we were talking about this when we were in Jonah. So many of us know the story, the first half of Jonah's um, part in the Bible, right? And it does come down to disobedience. And I really, and I guess because it's just so dramatic that, and it's not as, it doesn't come off as dramatic what happens when he actually does get to Nineveh. But you think that, yeah, a whale swallowing a man for 3 days, spitting him out because he didn't do what God told him. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But if you think of it from just a perspective that if you were to stand atop a tall building in Nineveh, and then you see, and then watching a people that you knew were largely pagan and heathen and awful in their practices and behaviors, views, all of a sudden listen to a prophet and as a general whole, at least, to listen to the call to repentance, the call to to listen to the warning that God gave, and show humility and shame. That's got to just look across the city and see people doing that and watch the change, however long it took. That's pretty incredible as well. And it illustrated when we read through Jonah that that anybody could listen to God's warnings. And anybody, if they listened and were obedient and faithful, can be spared and receive God's grace and forgiveness. Right? He's offering it here to the Ninevites, I guess, the people of Nineveh. It also shows in Nahum that just like the Israelites, anybody can fall back into poor behavior. And it's a sad thing to see. And that's what happens with Nineveh, because you notice it's been like, oh, great, it would be great if these folks turned around and just created a culture that Israel and Judah had missed out on. And in the end, they just end up getting comfortable and going back to their old ways, just like the Israelites and Judeans do as well. As we read through the many adventures of the Israelites through Judges and through the two kingdoms of Judges and Israel and Judah, you can fix things, you can act better, but if for some reason, it doesn't necessarily translate to the next generation or a couple of generations. Now, 150 years, and who knows when they really sunk down into it, but you assume that it'd be 150 years where God's had enough, right? That's several generations, right? You think about it, we're just over 150 years removed from the Civil War, right? Let's see, it's 2026, so 100 would be 1926 minus 50, 76. Yeah, so we're only 160 years removed from the Civil War. Think of how many generations have hit in between there, right? So Nineveh seemingly had a good run, but it sounds like towards the end did not continue to follow through, which it's an unfortunate cycle of things, right? And perhaps part of what contributed to that, might have been the behavior of Judah and Israel, and the fact that these folks from Nineveh can see the Israelites and Judeans, chosen people of God, behaving in this way with a covenant. Why should we have to act this way? Right? God warns them all the time. maybe maybe we can do what we want. Again, so much of I think the problems of the cultures around was because Judah and Israel didn't act in a way that would attract anybody to being obedient to God. Maybe with David, maybe with Solomon, but even then they were a little lax, especially in the latter days, the latter days of each of them, lax in allowing uh, other faiths, and that wasn't to be going on in their land. Ultimately, we're responsible for our own actions. But I've said this before: sin doesn't just affect you; sin affects the people around you. It has a butterfly effect, so to speak. Right? It's important that we remember that. It's important to remember that our actions are observed by other people. And you never know what actions you take, whether it be righteous or wicked. It might have an effect, positive or negative effect. Never underestimate the impact you might have in somebody else's life on a spiritual level. Surrounding Solomon might have been enviable, but his enormous harem was clearly a problem. Look, there's some, I don't know if you've seen this on there, but there is a movement for among some really, I think, really lonely men or really confused men out there to justify and normalize polygamy, right? And now I ignore them, but for a while I really was just engaging them because nobody. No, we're not talking about Mormons. We're talking about polygamists, like just that they are not Mormons, though you can compare them to Mormons because a lot of their justifications end up being the same. The A lot of them, I think a lot of it falls into that Hebrew roots movement, right? Because you hear a lot of the same, you hear a lot of the same language, a lot of the same talking points, a lot of the same syntax. Um, but they talk about how no, this is perfectly okay. They what's going on, Veritex? Welcome to the show. Um, I've sidetracked myself, so we haven't even gotten through. We're about halfway through the first, a little bit past the halfway past the first book. But these fellows on here talk about how polygamy is okay. That monogamy is a pagan inspired practice. That a lot of the problems we have in the world today, from a marriage and sexual lust standpoint, have to or they are here because of monogamy. They think that it's forced upon us by women. It is it's you see the imagery that they use and the justification they use, and it's just complete the lack of scriptural awareness uh is incredible. It's breathtaking, really. And look, it's guys in there that look through it and go, well, I never see him really say that there's anything wrong with it. I can get away, except for the fact that it points out all the reasons why you shouldn't be doing it, right? Um, Yet they still persist, right? And I don't know what got me off on that. Oh, the Solomon thing, right? Yeah, Solomon had this problem, right? He had a problem with lust. He had a problem with controlling his family. So did David. David had a problem with lust. Um, they were that's that's the thing. Uh, David had a man killed over it, right? Um, the they did have their problems with that. And not only that, but led them astray, right? And became weak on enforcing what the culture was going to be like. It's going to be, it is going to be a culture established by God that we have the rules for. And certainly Solomon was wise enough to act on that. And yeah, I say that too. I call him that too, Serranos. That's it's just a recipe for disaster, especially there, right? Because God has told him this is what's going to work for you guys. I've told you this. I'm gonna bless you if you do this. Do you think that God's gonna be like, oh, I forgot? No, he knows. I guess they forgot. Ninevites had at this point forgotten, and so doom's coming for you. They've forgotten. This is what the Lord says, though they are at full strength and many in number, even so they will be cut off and pass away. Though I have afflicted you and caused you grief, O Jerusalem, I will afflict you no longer. They were going through their own punishment. Now I will break this yoke of taxation off you, and I will tear off your shackles. The Lord has given a command concerning you, O king of Nineveh. Your name will no longer be perpetuated. I will cut off the carved idols and cast images from the temple of your gods. I will prepare your grave, for you are vile and unworthy. Behold, on the mountains of the feet of him who brings good news, telling of Assyria's destruction, who announces peace and prosperity. Celebrate your feasts, O Judah. Perform your vows. For the wicked king, the king of Assyria, the witch king of Assyria, the witch king of Angmar, yeah, it's going into my Lord of the Rings there. Well, for the wicked one, the king of Assyria will never again pass through you. He is completely cut off. So, there we have it, right? God, he talks about, he goes, how great is God? How powerful is God? And how much does he love justice? And how is he a God of vengeance, right? And Nineveh has taken this call, or Assyria, I should say, had taken this warning from Jonah seriously. That they'd forgotten it, and the things that they were doing were deplorable. Judah is doing better. They've repented, and so now the hammer comes down on Assyria because they shouldn't have been acting like this in the first place. All right. Footnotes here. An urgent message prophet is under compulsion to proclaim. Under the preaching of Jonah, the king of Nineveh, and all his people repented. But when Nahum came to Nineveh 150 years later, everything had changed, and the people had become hopelessly wicked. God's wrath was not to be turned away this time. Chapter 8 is talking about one of the times he mentions the overwhelming flood may be understood as a metaphor describing a conquering army, as well as a literal reference to a flood of water. Diodorus of Sicily refers to a legend that Nineveh could never be taken until the river became its enemy. Arbaces, the Scythian, had besieged the city in vain for 2 years. But in the third year, the Kozer River washed away a considerable section of the very great wall, and the invaders pushed through this opening. Nahum 2:6 refers to the devastating flood, which we haven't got to. Spoilers. And 3:13, oh no, 15, probably to the destruction of Nineveh by fire. The vivid descriptions of chapter 3 are historically accurate. Again, Nahum talking about what's going to happen. The city of Nineveh was the magnificent capital of the Assyrian Empire. The great palace of Sennacherib was without rival and contained at least 70 or more rooms. The city was home to more than 120,000 residents, at least twice the size of Babylon. There we go. Giving you an idea of how big it was. Hey, what's going on, Jenny? Giving you an idea of how big it was. But we all knew this from Jonah, right? And had no less than 15 gates in the wall surrounding the city. During its glory days, it was probably the largest city in the known world, built near the juncture of the Tigris River and its tributary, the Kozer. It was served by an elaborate water system of 18 canals. Nineveh had many suburbs, 3 of which are mentioned along with Nineveh in Genesis 10, 11, and 12. Nineveh's extensive ruins are located near the modern city of, you remember, Mosul, Iraq. Oh, and the reference to the evil king, it was the king's name is Sennacherib, just like the palace, or the palace of Sennacherib. Oh, that's right. Sennacherib's a dude. The palace, his palace is Sennacherib. That's right. It's not the name of the palace. It's the dude. I don't know why I was zoning out like that. Who reigned over Syria from 705 to 681. He led an attack on Judah in 701 BC. It did not go well for him, I don't think. Doesn't go well for him here. The overthrow of Nineveh. Sad faces, everybody. We thought we'd been able to move past this. We thought Jonah saved the city. And indeed, these people in heating things were part of that action. But now we're 150 years removed. And it's been forgotten. And it's not important. Because what do we need? We need to do what we want to do. That's what we people do. Unfortunately. The overthrow of Nineveh, the one who scatters, has come up against you, Nineveh. Man the fortress and ramparts. Watch the road. Strengthen your back. Prepare for battle. Summon all your strength. For the Lord will restore the splendor and majesty of Jacob, like the splendor of ancient and united Israel. Even though destroyers have destroyed them and ruined their vine branches. The shields of his soldiers of Media and Babylon are colored red. The warriors are dressed in scarlet. The chariots blaze with fire of flashing steel. When he is prepared to march, and the cypress spears are brandished for battle. Chariots race madly in the streets. They rush wildly in the broad plazas. Their appearance is like torches. They rush in various directions like forked lightning. He remembers and summons his nobles. They stumble in their march, terrified because of the attack. They hurry to the city wall, and the mantlet is prepared and firmly set up. The gates of the rivers surrounding Nineveh are opened, and the palace of sun-dried brick is dissolved by the torrents. It is decreed. Nineveh is stripped, and she is carried away, and her handmaids are moaning like the sound of doves beating on their breasts in sorrow. Though Nineveh was like a pool of water throughout her days, now her inhabitants are fleeing. Stop, stop, a few cry. But no one turns back. Plunder the silver, plunder the gold, for there is no end to the treasure. Wealth from every precious object. She is emptied. She is desolate and waste. Hearts melting in fear and knees knocking. Anguish is in the whole body, and the faces of all grow pale. Where is the den of the lions, Assyria, and the feeding place of the young lions, where the lion, lioness, and lion's cub prowled with nothing to fear? The lion of Assyria tore enough for its cubs, the Assyrian citizens, killed enough prey for his lionesses, and filled his lairs with prey and his dens with torn flesh. Behold, I am against you, Nineveh, declared the Lord of hosts. And I will burn your chariots in the smoke, and the sword will devour your young lions. I will cut off your prey from the land, and the voice of your messengers will no longer be heard. Ooh. Now, the first footnote says Nahum begins his message to Nineveh with a brief sarcastic statement. Did I miss that? Did I miss the sarcasm? Hold on. Referring to the Medes, the Babylonians, the Scythians, who were allied against Assyria. Verse 1, let's see. Oh, I guess it's summon all your strength. Yeah, I guess I don't read that very well. Let's look over at the English Standard. The scatter has come up against you. Man the ramparts, watch the road, dress for battle, collect all your strength. Maybe it's just basically like, hey, go ahead and try to defend yourself. The Babylonians are here. The Scythians are here. The Medes are here. What are you going to do? You better run. I would run right now, right? The Medes were an ancient Iranian people who lived in the area that is now the northwestern part of modern-day Iran. After they joined with the Chaldeans of Babylonia to defeat the Assyrians, they established their own empire. It was the largest empire of its day until Cyrus the Great united the Medes and the Persians to form the Achaemenid Empire, which stretched over several million square miles. Somehow I remembered that that just unlocks a core memory from way back in 6th grade during world history. Interesting where it's coming from now, right? But yeah, this is what it comes to. Like Nahum says, your doom's coming. This is kind of how it's going to happen, right? And he describes it in a very distressful details. Age of Empires didn't come out until I was in 9th grade, sir. But I also probably learned it from there too. The original Age of Empires, not 2. Based, by the way. Loved it. What was I gonna say? Thanks, Tyrannos. Old, yeah. Dating myself. But Nahum gets very descriptive in what's going on. Tells it like a what the perspective's going to be like for people who are being conquered, right? Everything's being stripped away. People are running. People are afraid. People are watching themselves or their friends and their protectors being cut down. Families being cut down. The place is being sacked. They're running for their lives. And what do we see? Chariots running through the streets, right? And everything's chaos and madness. They broke through, right? Oddly enough, this actually happens. We say oddly enough, and there's my sarcasm, because what do we know? We know that he's a prophet. We know that God's telling him what's going to happen. But this is what's going to happen. And they talk about it, and you're going to lose all your treasure. You used to be so great, Assyria, and the Assyrians certainly were a great power. And they were given a great opportunity. And we see that. It's all the what ifs. All the what ifs that we could think of. What if Nineveh had stayed relevant? What if Nineveh had made overtures to establish a covenant with God as well? Right? What if Israel and Judah had listened to what God told them and honored their covenant for generations with consistency and faithfulness? What if? Well, what we see is the consequences of those actions. What we are experiencing today is a little bit of that as well. Or maybe it's a lot of that. I don't know. What I know is we don't follow what God instructs. And there's much strife in ways that we understand, in ways that maybe we don't perceive. That's what's going on with Nineveh. Let's see how long Nahum 3 is. It's long enough. We'll save Nahum for Friday. Maybe we'll talk about something else as well. So, all right, that's gonna be a stream tonight. Little short stream. But we're focusing on just one location, but it's what we learn out of here is something that we can pull from multiple examples in the Bible and in history in general, right? One generation or a couple of generations understands and listens and is diligent, right? That things need to be held to a certain standard, and there are expectations. But the further you get away with that, the more comfortable people get, and the more people forget, the more they sink into their own bad habits. And I'm sure you understand how that applies to your life, right? If you don't stay disciplined in something, how that can affect you, right? All right, so Serranos, Veritex, Jenny LJ. Thank you guys for being in the chat. I love you guys. Love you guys, and glad to see you guys here. As always, appreciate it. Y'all make the show better. To the other folks who are listening in and not in the chat, I would like you to be. You're invited to be. I want you to know that it would be a welcome. You would be a welcome addition, right? But I understand you might not want to. You might not be able to. But nonetheless, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad that I'm creating content, and you're hearing the word and feeling drawn in to come back. I'm glad, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. And how should I say it? Take the time to listen and contemplate what's being said, right? And to everybody who is catching up on replay, thank you for watching. First off, sorry I missed you. Hope to catch you live sometime soon. Everybody have a good night, and God bless.